My wife cheated while we were engaged and I just found it out 16 years later. It was a quiet evening in late summer when my world was turned upside down. My wife, Emily, and I had been together for over 20 years. Married for 14 of those. We were high school sweethearts. Each other's first loves, and I thought we had built a solid foundation for our life together. We had a daughter who was the light of our lives, and I believed we had a happy marriage. But sometimes, life throws you curveballs you never saw coming. It all started with a chance encounter. We were out for dinner at a local restaurant, trying to enjoy a rare evening out without our daughter, when I saw him, the man who had always been a shadow in our relationship, David. He was the guy the first had always been suspicious of. He and Emily had met through mutual work connections years ago. And even though Emily had always downplayed our interactions, I had never liked him. There was something about him that didn't sit right with me. And I often voiced my concerns to Emily over the years. David was still married at the time. And I knew he was going through a divorce, which made things even more complicated. Over the years, whenever David's name came up, or if we happened to see him in public, I would bring up my suspicions. Emily would always brush it off, telling me that he had tried to talk to her, but she had turned him down and put him in his place. I wanted to believe her. And I did. I trusted her, and I wanted to believe that there was nothing more to it. But as I watched David from across the restaurant that night, memories and doubts flooded back. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It was as if seeing him in person made all my old suspicions resurface. The next few days were a blur of anxiety and unease. I couldn't get him out of my mind. I decided to ask Emily about him again, hoping to lay my fears to rest. I approached the topic with a calm demeanor, but I could sense that Emily was tense. She initially told me that they had kissed twice during the time we were engaged. But she insisted that was all. I tried to accept that, but the nagging feeling in the back of my mind wouldn't go away. I needed to know the whole truth, even if it meant reopening old wounds. So, I asked again, and this time, Emily's demeanor changed. Her face grew pale, and tears welled up in her eyes as she confessed the truth. They had not only kissed but had also had sex twice, once after work one night and once during her lunch break. The betrayal hit me like a freight train. 16 years later, I was learning about this hidden chapter of our past, and it felt like my entire world had been shattered. Emily told me that this was the only time she had ever cheated on me. I wanted to believe her. And I wanted to believe that our 14 years of marriage had been real and meaningful. But the pain was raw and overwhelming. The person I had trusted with my heart had been unfaithful, and it made me question everything about our relationship. The days following her confession were some of the hardest of my life. I was consumed by a whirlwind of emotions: anger, hurt, betrayal, and confusion. I found myself replaying every moment from the past, searching for signs I might have missed, trying to make sense of the reality I had been presented with. Emily was apologetic and remorseful, but her apologies did little to ease the pain. I spent hours walking aimlessly around our neighborhood, trying to clear my head. I didn't want to make any rash decisions, but I also couldn't shake the feeling that our relationship had changed forever. The trust that had once been the cornerstone of our marriage had been irrevocably damaged. I found myself questioning the foundation of our relationship, wondering if everything we had built together was a lie. As the days turned into weeks, I struggled to find a sense of normalcy. I threw myself into my work, trying to distract myself from the turmoil at home. Emily and I had many conversations about what had happened, and she assured me that it was a mistake from the past, and that she had never been unfaithful again. She said she was committed to working through our issues, and she wanted to rebuild our trust. But rebuilding trust is not something that happens overnight. It requires time, effort, and a lot of patience. I knew that if we were going to move forward, we would need to address the issues that had led to this situation and work together to heal. We started attending couples therapy, hoping that professional guidance would help us navigate the complex emotions and challenges we were facing. During therapy, we explored the reasons behind Emily's actions and the impact they had on me. It was a difficult process, but it was necessary to understand what had led to the infidelity and how we could move past it. Emily admitted that she had been struggling with her own insecurities and emotional issues at the time, and she had made a series of poor decisions that she deeply regretted. As for me, I had to confront my own feelings of betrayal and hurt. I had to learn to trust again and find a way to forgive Emily. Not for her sake but for my own peace of mind. It wasn't easy, and there were times when I felt like giving up. But I knew that if we wanted to salvage our marriage, we needed to put in the work. Over time, I began to see progress. Emily made a genuine effort to be transparent and honest, and I started to see glimpses of the woman I had fallen in love with years ago. We worked on rebuilding our communication and addressing the underlying issues in our relationship. It was a slow and challenging process, but it was also an opportunity for growth and healing. The journey has not been without its setbacks. There were moments when the pain resurfaced, and the old wounds felt raw, but we continued to push forward, learning to navigate the complexities of our emotions and rebuilding the trust that had been broken. It has been a long and difficult road, but I believe that with time and effort, we can find a way to move past this and create a new chapter in our lives. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I am committed to working through this together. The road to healing is long and uncertain, but I believe that with patience, understanding, and a willingness to confront the past, we can find a way to rebuild our relationship and move forward.
My story is a tumultuous one, marked by betrayal, hurt, and ongoing conflict. It begins a little over a year ago, when I, a 22-year-old woman, moved back to my hometown to live with my boyfriend, Bob. Bob was sharing an apartment with his brother, Jess, and their young child. Given that Jess was my only connection in town at the time, I hoped we would bond. For a while, it seemed like we were on the path to building a friendship. Everything changed when I found out I was pregnant. The news was a mix of joy and fear. The excitement of expecting a baby was tempered by my doctor's recommendation to have an abortion due to significant health risks. Jess, who had initially been supportive, seemed to undergo a dramatic transformation. The shift began subtly, with Jess's enthusiasm waning and her support becoming more conditional. It escalated quickly when she took to Facebook, launching a series of rants about me. She publicly condemned me as a murderer, asserting that I was making a grave mistake and that God would find a way to make everything okay if I just chose to keep the baby. It wasn't just idle chatter. Jess had made my personal situation public knowledge, sharing it with Bob's family and friends. The reaction was swift and harsh. I began receiving a flood of nasty messages from her family, imploring me to reconsider. Her mother even went so far as to offer to adopt the baby, a gesture that felt more like an intrusion than a solution. Despite the mounting pressure, I decided to follow my doctor's advice and had the abortion. The decision was incredibly difficult, but I had to prioritize my health and well-being. The atmosphere at home became suffocating. Jess's hostility had created a toxic environment, and Bob and I decided to move out shortly after the procedure. We sought a fresh start away from the hostility and judgment that had poisoned our lives. Since we moved out, Jess's behavior has been nothing short of hostile. She began openly disparaging me behind my back, using derogatory terms to describe me due to my past as a stripper and adult performer. She called me a dirty whore, a label that cut deeply and felt like a personal attack on my character and choices. Even after Bob and I married in February, Jess's animosity didn't wane. She went so far as to question Bob's commitment, asking him if he really wanted to be with someone like me. Her words stung, and the trust I once had in her dissipated completely. In response to her behavior, we had to block her on all social media platforms and phone numbers, hoping to put an end to her relentless intrusions. Jess's accusations did not stop there. She claimed that I had ruined her relationship with Bob and accused me of taking Bob away from his family. This was perplexing since we made a concerted effort to see his family at least 3 times a week. Her accusations seemed to be more about shifting blame and deflecting from her own behavior than addressing any real issues. The situation escalated further when Jess started using free texting apps to contact Bob. Despite being married herself, she sent late-night messages like, "You up?" The persistence of her attempts to reach out was alarming and disrespectful. Jess's attempts to reconnect became a troubling pattern, one that seemed to disregard our clear boundaries. My pregnancy and subsequent move had already strained my relationship with Jess, but the latest developments made it clear that reconciliation was unlikely. Jess had even questioned Bob about whether he would need a paternity test. which was a blatant intrusion into our personal lives and a final breach of trust. Now, I'm 9 months pregnant with a healthy baby, and Jess has been trying to reconnect. She claims she wants to start over. But I'm skeptical. The history of her behavior, including the continued behind-the-back talk and disrespectful actions, makes it hard to believe that her intentions are sincere. Bob has supported me throughout this ordeal, repeatedly telling Jess to respect our boundaries. Despite our efforts to block her, she keeps finding new ways to contact us, showing a persistence that feels invasive and unwelcome. So, the question remains: Aida for not wanting to repair my relationship with Jess after she called me a murderer and has shown consistent disrespect and hostility? I have struggled with the idea of forgiveness, especially given the pain and the ongoing issues that Jess has created. My priority now is my family and the new life we are about to welcome. And I'm unsure if there is room for reconciliation in the midst of such hurt.